How do you get ready for a team like Minnesota that's going to try to run the ball right through you?
I mean, you just got to find the right mix of personnel that you have. It's a little bit different in a lot of ways than what we've what we've played as far as what they try to do. Schematically similar, their personnel is a little bit different. So, got to try to match that the best we can. That's the only thing that you really can do.
Was this O-line stacked to the O-lines you faced this year? Their offensive line, where does it stack up to the ones you faced this year?
I mean, it's it's really, really good, but different. And I guess the best way to put it, because they're obviously extremely big. But they probably work as well together as a unit as anybody that we've played for what they do, and it always makes it tough, And they're experienced, they're big, they're strong. Obviously their tackles are as big as anybody we've played, but they're different in a lot of ways. But they work extremely well together with their scheme.
So they're different in a lot of ways. What's unique about them?
They're just a little more. I don't want to say Big Ten style of offense. I don't like using those, by conference, but they're a little more downhill than people are in our league. The closest one to what we see as far as the scheme of how the O-line plays was probably Oklahoma State, but they use their motions and their personnel a lot different than Minnesota does. But how they split you and how they play are very similar to that. That's the only one I can really think of.
Fair to say that you're matching quickness against their strength and size?
Yeah. I mean, that's fair to say. Yeah, that's fair to say. But I mean, I think that power, along with quickness, a lot of times is a matchup that I've always liked. I mean, it's power and explosiveness as opposed to size. Y'all have heard me say that about our guys before and how we evaluate and how we recruit, and I think that has some advantages. It has some disadvantages also.
Decided to get back Jackie and Lance and a couple of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. Just allows you to be a little more flexible with what you're trying to do.
Any difference when a guy's returning from an injury after maybe a month or so of not playing as opposed to a week or two?
I think it's more just about getting back in the groove, getting a little bit of shape. It's just like any sport where you're constantly moving. If you don't do it, once a week, football, or 2 or 3 times a week, basketball, I mean, it doesn't take long to get out of that, to get out of shape a little bit. Not necessarily out of rhythm, but that's probably the biggest thing they've got to get back, is just playing at that tempo, at that sustained effort for that long. That when you're out of that for a while, that's what gets you more than anything.
Saw a stat. They've attempted the fewest passes, except for the service academies this year. I think they're averaging like 20 a game. Do you go into the game thinking, well, they may throw it more, kind of like the deal like Baylor did, where they kind of caught you off guard a little bit, or do you say, well, this is what they're going to do, and we work on that?
I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is worry about what they do. You can't go in, with what ifs. Now you have to understand they also are very, very high in the country in time of possession. So those 20 pass plays, there may only be 35 to 40 run plays. So it's not as big of a difference sometimes as you think it would be, because they're managing the clock. So it seems like that, hey, if there's only 20 passes, there's got to be, that's a quarter of the plays, when it's probably more like a third, I would guess. I don't know, but I would just guess.
Because of their style.
Exactly.
Does that put a little more emphasis on like winning first down though, trying to get?
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter the opponent, when you play somebody that's their style of play, that you have it helps if you can get them behind the chains, but you also have to be you have to be careful. You have to be smart, because he just mentioned Baylor. That's where they caught us, was a first down I'm sorry, not a first down, but an early down pass play that got us for a touchdown, and that's what you don't want to do. So you have to be careful with how, I guess greedy is the word to use there. You got to be careful.
They've run it on everybody. Is there a pattern to the way they're running it? Is it similar to how they're running the ball on people when you watch them?
I mean, that's what they want to be good at, and that is what they're good at. And so when you're good at something, you're good at it, and that's got a lot to do with a combination of scheme and personnel together. But that's what they want to be. They're not trying to trick you about where they're at and what they're going to do. You know what they're going to do, and that's when you see somebody that has done that on everybody. That's obviously that's what they're trying to be good at, and they are, and they do enough RPO game and to keep you honest off of that, because again, you get too greedy on those plays. If they're caught and it's one missed tackle and it's touchdown, so there's a risk reward. You got to kind of weigh out there.
Dress up a lot of stuff and just a few plays. Is that what they normally do, or when you watch?
Yeah, I mean, they don't. If you look at just the just the overall play set, however you determine that zone, stretch, whatever. Yeah, they don't run very many plays. Now there's some ways that they get to some different things that are unique to what we've seen, and so those are things we got to work.
Neil mentioned Hammond Russell is really developing and could see some from you. What have you seen out of him?
Well, I mean, Hammond is a kid that he developed in his first year exactly how we wanted to. He was a 6'3.5", 6'4" plus kid who we knew was a big defensive end. His skill set was not normally what a defensive end would be, but if you look at his body structure, and he's already 200 and almost 90 pounds, somewhere in that range. And that's what you want. That kid is going to be able to play multiple positions for you. As an edge guy in high school, as an inside guy in college, and so he's his best football is ahead of him. But in the short amount of time he's been here, he's developing in a way that I'm very pleased with.
Jordan, you're going to probably lose a pretty significant chunk of this unit, and this is probably going to be the last game we see 3, 4, or 5 of these guys in, and they've been a part of turning this defense around to being a pretty good defense. I mean, does that set in at all? And just what is this group that you probably lose after this game into this program with you personally?
I mean, a lot. I mean, you look at guys, Josh Chandler, Taj Austin, Dante Stills, Alonzo Adai, Sean Mahone. I mean, those are guys that have played a lot of snaps here. And the bulk of those, most every one of those guys, some of them all those guys, or some of them all the snaps have been in the last 3 years. And so to get to where, we have kind of created an expectation of what we want to be, which is ultimately the goal, but that's done in the off season. So it's meant the world to me. I mean, what they've done, what they've been able to do. You talk about a group last year that led all Power 5 in total defense. I think number 4 overall on all 130 whatever. I don't even know how many there are now. 30, 31, 32. Led the Big 12. And this year, while I think a lot of people expecting a tremendous drop off, they're really, if there was one, it was due to some shortness in some areas and some unexpected injuries. And so we really didn't. I think we've been good where we needed to be good. It was to win the game instead of worrying about being good statistically. And that's a tribute to our kids. I've always said this: it's not what we do, it's how we do things. And our kids play extremely hard. They play physical. They're not always do things perfect, and nobody makes more mistakes than I do. But I'm really proud of them. They've been through quite a bit, and they didn't have to respond in a lot of ways that they did over the last 3 years, and they have. And they responded. If that's the one word that comes to mind with this year, and some situations. I go back to Virginia Tech. They've always responded in key situations where we had to have them. And that says a lot about them. But then moving forward, What it does is it sets an expectation for younger guys, and younger guys have to step into those roles. That's why we recruit. That's why we develop. And so, as much as that group means to me, I'm just excited about the next group.